Hare Krishna. Pleasure to be here with you. You've seen the Taiwan Chandra and their servants. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to read one verse from 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Now this is 15th chapter, text number 9. Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam graham evacha disthana manashchayam vishayan upasevate. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Everyone, please repeat. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped around the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport. In other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure, like water, but when we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, but the spirit soul is pure. But consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, then in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of many other forms, for there are 8,400,000 species. Om Jnana Vinamjana Sharakaya Chakshurudhiritam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Chaitanya Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhuttade Ayam Prakatam Maham Sadakistan Parihitam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhuttade Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Debe Gauravani Pacharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Pastacharishatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. So in 3 verses, one famous verse, verse number 7, described in the 15th chapter, the living entity is part and parcel of Krishna. But Manasaskanindriyani Prakritistanani Prashati. But he's forced to, by the influence of the mind and the senses around the mind, forced to act in a certain way. This is discussed in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that the living entity, that Hetu Prakriti Uchate. That material nature is very powerful. Very powerful. She controls everything in this material atmosphere. So, the living entity is under the control, but he doesn't think he's under the control. And there is a certain degree of independence. That certain degree of independence is that the living entity, the living entity, he or she, it, whatever body they may be in. We've been, all of us have been he, she's, and it's for many times. So they get, according to, they can't escape material nature, but then Purusha Supradupamanam. So material nature is it seems like the Krishna is imposing some conditions upon it. This is popular, this is the escape mechanism which we find in most religions in the world. They say, well, God put me in this situation, so I'll just do the best I can. They don't realize, people don't realize, that they are creating their own future. They are entering into the atmosphere of material nature. And by their own choice, Purusha, Sukha Dukkha, Bhokti, Pitya Uchita. Krishna says that the living entity suffers and enjoys according to his own desire. His desire, he wants to enjoy, as Srila Prabhupada says here in the verse that we just read, verse number 9, that the living entity wants to enjoy a particular set of senses which are grouped around the mind. Of course, in some bodies, there's not much mind to group around. Like you look at the mental functions of an amoeba, not very developed. So there's not many senses either. They don't have arms, they don't have legs, they don't have eyes. But those that have more advanced consciousness, they get these things. Legs, arms, or 4 legs, or 6 legs, or 8 legs, or 2 eyes, or 4 eyes, or 6 eyes. So one entity, living entity in Thailand that had 24 eyes. And some insects have, like little lenses. They have like 100 or 200 lenses on each eye. All kinds of interesting situations. But everyone wants to enjoy, and everyone is forced to suffer. So we come into this material atmosphere, but the material nature is very strong, very powerful. And therefore material nature will, according to the type of body that we have, or that we obtain, material nature will create the circumstance by which I can try to enjoy and give me the corresponding enjoyment and suffering according to my past activity. Now, Srila Prabhupada gave the example, just like a crab. He gave this example in Los Angeles. Every morning he would walk on Venice Beach. And he said, when we're walking, the crab, out of fear runs into the ocean. The Prabhupada said, he doesn't run into the forest, because in the forest he finds no shelter. So basically speaking, Bhagavad Gita is saying, we will go where we feel shelter. And therefore, if we want the best possible situation, we should try to find the best shelter. And Prabhupada also gave an example, just speaking about Krishna's potency. Parasya Shakti Vidaya Vishnu. Krishna has unlimited potency. He doesn't even manifest all those potencies. He doesn't manifest most of those potencies. He didn't manifest the potencies of love, loving exchanges with his devotees, and all the many different manifestations of rasa, or relationship. But as far as the potencies that manage this world, Krishna is not interested. And Prabhupada, this classic example, here he gives 2 times in Bhagavad Gita, and many, many lectures, that the king does not have to labor, or the owner of a big commercial entity. They tell everyone else what to do. Krishna doesn't even tell everyone else what to do. Of course he does, he gives us Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. But he gives it to Arjuna, and he says that the reason I'm giving this to you is that Bhaktusi Mestakam Cheti, because you are my devotee and you are my friend. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita is encouraging us to become friends of Krishna. Because we have a designation, friends of Krishna. People that are associated with our movement, they like kirtan, but they don't like the rest. Like kirtan and Prasad, but everything else is on hold. Let's see, maybe in the future. But this friend of Krishna, because Krishna's already declared, he is our best friend. That he is Bhaktaram Jagatapasam Sagaram Lokameshwaram Suridam Sarvam. He's the friend of every living entity, not just the human being. In so many places they think human beings, just like in one man was arguing with me. He had his dog, and he was walking his dog. Somehow or another we got into that. And he said that, what is the problem with, I said, we're vegetarian. He said, well, there's no need to be vegetarian. God has created all these creatures so that we can eat them. So I looked at his dog, and I said, so why don't you eat your dog? He's just created to be eaten. My dog! Yeah. Dog? Dog meat is cheaper than, maybe not in the U.S., but China, great. Anybody can get it. So, and he, just couldn't, even then he couldn't understand. The brother was preaching for one man from the World Health Organization. Very nice man, but just didn't have a very philosophical brain. And the Prabhupada was giving me the example of what it means to be in the material world. He gave him many examples, he couldn't quite catch it. So then he Prabhupada finally said, the material world is actually like a prison. And we're like prisoners. And we, in the prison, you're breaking bricks. That used to be the main activities of prisoners. They break bricks, or break stones, or making cement, or recycling, or they make license plates, or they do laundry. So they have some work. So Prabhupada said, so one man is breaking, 2 men are breaking bricks, and one man says to the other that if we just obey, or we just conduct our lives properly, we can stop breaking bricks and we can leave here. And the other man says, just shut up and break your bricks. Prabhupada said, this is material consciousness. That even if you try to tell someone, encourage someone to leave the material atmosphere, they say, no, just break bricks, just work. Everything's material, everything's coming from matter. So, but then the man said, he still didn't understand. So, he said, well, Swami, I really appreciate it, your time, and I wish you the best. I've got to go break some bricks. So, Prabhupada said, give him Prasad. So, I inquired who was there in that interview, and the devotee told me that afterwards, Prabhupada said, when someone has no brain, then the only solution is Prasad and the holy name. Even the holy name they may not be able to understand. But Prasadam, everyone understands. Even the dog understands. Prasadam. I think I mentioned it here before. We had one dog in Colombia many years ago, the Doberman, and he became so purified by Prasadam. First we gave him Prasadam every day, then he would not eat any meat. We didn't give him any meat, but even he would kill a chicken, but he wouldn't eat it. He was all like that. Kill things, kill a little entity. And then we kept giving Prasadam, giving a lot of maha. Then he would only eat Ekadashi Prasad because he got if you gave him some grains, he wouldn't eat it. And then after some more time, he would only eat maha Prasad. We would give him some other Prasadam, he wouldn't take it. We give him maha, he would take it. Very advanced dog. And there's many stuff. I mean, Shivananda is saying he had a dog, he had a dog. The dog joined the pilgrimage. Shivananda Sain was bringing all the devotees from Bengal to Jagannath Puri. And his dog started following the devotees, and he would sit and he would take prasadam. Shivananda Sain became his protector. As I was saying, the crabs, they take shelter in the ocean. Other living entities take shelter of someone else. A small child takes shelter of his mother or father's leg or embrace. And so this dog took shelter of Shivananda Sain, very intelligent. And not because he was getting fed. Actually, in the beginning, they didn't even feed him. But, so, one day, and even when they came to cross the river, the Muslim guard at the river said, if you want the dog to cross, he has to pay toll. So Shivananda Sain paid his toll. And next day, after they crossed the river, then the dog disappeared. Shivananda then he sent all the devotees out in all directions looking for this dog. Like hours and hours. Nobody could find the dog. So then they arrived at Jagannath Puri. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu greeted them and gave them garments. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, giving garments to the devotees, showing them. Sometimes we think, I'm senior. I've been around for 25 years. Or whatever. So, therefore, people should give me the garment. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who has been around eternally as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is giving garments to the people, showing us the mood of service. So anyway, devotees all came in. Lord Chaitanya invited them to take prasadam. And they looked. They all sat. They looked. There's the dog. The dog is sitting there. And just intently staring at Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya took a piece of coconut and threw it to the dog. The dog caught the coconut, ate it, and fell over dead. And a forearm, Vaikuntha form, came out of the body and went back home. And another dog, which we're talking about now, when Lord Chaitanya was a small child, he and his friends, they found some puppies. These were puppies. So they said, let us all take a puppy home. Children especially, they like small animals. So they said, Nima, you choose the first puppy. So Nima, he chose one. And then all the other boys, they said, just see, you always get the best. They said, will you ask him? So anyway, he took the puppy home, and Mother Shachi said, my son, I'm trying to train you to be a Brahmin, and you bring a dog into the house. Of course, Vedic culture, dogs never lived in the house. Nowadays, they're the actual master of the house. It's like I went to one person's house, and he picked me up to do a little program, teach to them a little bit. They were very new people. And so we arrived at his house. He walked in the door, and he looked at his chair, and the dog was sitting in the chair. So he said, get down. So he sat down in the chair. So I said, so how long will you be sitting in that chair? And so we were going to talk. I said, after we finished, well, maybe an hour, 2 hours. How many hours do you think the dog was sitting in the chair? Probably like 8 or 10 hours. So therefore, he's the master. I said, do you ever take your dog out for a walk? He said, yeah. I said, so do you go where he wants or he goes where you want? Well, he goes where I want, but sometimes he has to, do his business. I said, yeah. So he's controlling, and you're obeying. So he finally realized it. Actually he took a step of Bhagavad Gita. So anyway, Lord Chaitanya, Sachi Devi said, take this dog outside. Lord Chaitanya cried. He said, no, that's all right. You go bathe in the Ganga, and I'll take care of the dog. So Nimai went to the Ganga, and Mother Sachi took the dog and threw him out. And Lord Chaitanya came back. Of course, he knows this because he's in everyone's heart. And he said, oh, I'm very sorry, the dog ran away. And Lord Chaitanya just smiled and went away. Then, sometime later, all in Navadvip, this dog just came out in front of the house of Lord Chaitanya, stood up on his hind legs with his paws in the air, like this, and started chanting the holy name, Govinda, 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 and fell over dead. And a chariot came from below the Vrindavan, and his spiritual body came out, and he went back home back to God. So the point is that the living entity needs shelter. We need material, of course, entities with lower consciousness, they will look for shelter in matter. And this is what Srila Prabhupada is explaining here. Adulterated consciousness, or consciousness that is mixed, that is influenced by matter, that is influenced by the modes of nature, that kind of consciousness will influence us to take shelter of material energy. And we see everyone's doing it. And wherever you find your shelter, you will feel secure. But the unfortunate thing is, whatever shelter we choose in this world to take, we will never feel secure unless it's Krishna. And even if you take shelter of Krishna, if you don't serve him properly, then the mind will create some doubt. Because if you're not absorbed in Krishna, Just like Srila Prabhupada said, there's only two possibilities, Krishna and Maya. And therefore, yeyatamam bhavanyatetam kudharavajamyaham. That Krishna will reciprocate with the living entity in the same proportion that the living entity serves him. So, therefore, Krishna is, if we give 40%, Krishna gives us 40% material energy. So where will we get the other 60% of what we will experience? We'll get it from material nature. So we can't, as Srila Prabhupada said, just like oil and water. You can mix them up very quickly and they seem to be together, but they will separate. So material nature ultimately will kick us out. Very, in a nice way or a not so nice way. If you did some pious activities, you may leave this body very peacefully. If you did impious activities, you may get kicked out very violently. But material nature will not tolerate. Therefore, I've said many times, that Maya is the best business person because she takes the living entity on her lap, as Bhakti Thakur said, that Jiv Jago Gorekanda Ole. That that Maya is like an evil person, that we are sleeping in the lap of Maya. So she has us in our lap, and then she throws us on the ground. Otherwise, you get some wealth, you get some happiness in this world, and then it will all be taken away. But then, even though Maya gives us something and takes it all back, we give it all back to her. And then we come back for more, and we give everything to her, and she takes it, and the only thing she does is throws it back on the floor. So therefore, this is the best. Who could do better business? People give me everything they have, I get rid of them, and then they come back and give me more. Therefore, Maya is the best business person in the universe. And she has everybody giving her everything. And then she gives nothing in return, although she takes everything. So, of course, she's representing Krishna. Debe Gunamayi. She is divine, Krishna's divine energy. But divine, just like a devotee may have a material body, but he's working under the divine energy of Krishna. So Maya is working under the divine energy of Krishna. She is part of that divine energy within the material world. And her greatest desire is to help us or assist us in coming closer to Krishna. That is Maya's real desire. So much so that at the end of Kali Yuga, Maya approached Krishna. And she said that, "My Lord, I see all of your devotees, your beautiful pastime. Everyone is loving you. You're playing your flute so beautifully. But my service is I have to make everyone miserable. I have to make everyone suffer." So, like Krishna said, but your service is so important because you protect me from people who are not serious. And then I said, yes, but I would like to, sometime I would like to just be able to serve you. And so Krishna said, in my next incarnation, you can become my servant. So the next incarnation was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Maya came and surrendered. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't engage her, he engaged her through his devotee, Haridas Thakur. And she became a pure devotee and worshipped Tulsi Devi and Krishna and chanted the holy name day and night for her whole life. She was so happy. So the point is that Maya actually wants to help. That's her inner desire. But she has to make sure. It's like someone may come begging, can you give me some money? So Prabhupada said, before you give someone some money, some charity, understand that they will use it properly. So Prabhupada said, the safest way to give charity is give to an old woman, because they will not commit sinful activity. Old pious woman, vegetarian. If they're not vegetarian, they'll take your money and go to McDonald's. But anyway, so this is what it's talking about here. We have to purify our consciousness. If we don't have our consciousness 100% purified, then Krishna will facilitate us to take one body after another. So Krishna gives us facility. And Krishna is giving such wonderful facility. One time Srila Prabhupada, quoting Lord Brahma, Yat Prabhava Prabhato Jagananda Kotishta Shesha Vasudhani Vibhuti Vibhina. So that means, Lord Brahma says, that Krishna has unlimited expansion. His energy is unlimited. And he creates Ashesha Vasudhani. Vasudha means planet. Just like we move around in a little automobile, or we think we're very proud. We've made automobiles, we've made airplanes, and Krishna makes his vehicles. He makes unlimited quantities of vehicles that are fully equipped, which are all these planets, and they're fully equipped. Just like in a car, we may have AC or heating. You don't need heating down here, but in some facility. But Krishna equips his vehicle with trees and oceans and rivers and everything that the living entity needs. Just like right now, we're traveling through space at an amazing speed. It's like if you're in a car traveling at too fast, then it's bouncing, uncomfortable. But here we are on this vehicle called Earth, and traveling through space at thousands of miles per hour, and we don't feel it. We don't feel like the wind's blowing. You can imagine, like if you're in anybody here ever had a motorcycle? Well, I had one when I was young. So you go 60 miles per hour or 100 foot per hour, and it's like, practically blows you off the motorcycle. So what would we feel like if we were getting the wind from going several thousand miles per hour? Brush us all off with load. But Krishna's arranged it. We just get a nice breeze. Every once in a while we don't get it. We don't get, sometimes we get a hurricane also. But that's just due to our collective material activity. So Krishna says here, actually says in the next verse, Ukramantamidam stitam bhakti pujanam eva gunatvitam. So everyone is working in such a way that they're taking steps, and Ukramantam, the last step is called the time of death. You take that step out of the body. So the previous verse speaks about, I just read the previous verse, just the verse itself. The living entity in the material world carries this different conception of life from one body to another, as the air carries aroma. As he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So we've heard, how many times have we heard this? that we're not the body, we should not take one body out of another. But everyone that's sitting here, you're very important. You have some degree of Krishna consciousness. You're comfortable, at least somewhat comfortable. And so when we get too comfortable, we have a tendency to not advance very much spiritually. And therefore Krishna makes it a little uncomfortable. So that we will take shelter of it. So Krishna takes all of our other shelters. Some people take shelter of alcohol. Some people take shelter of drugs. Some people take shelter of money. Some people take shelter of knowledge. So whatever we take shelter of, Krishna gives us faith in that particular object. But he also informs us that it is temporary. And the more you take shelter of something temporary, you're depending on something that will disappear. Either it will disappear or you will disappear. But disappearance will be there. And so this is what we're confronted with. So Krishna says here very clearly that before you take this last step, where the living entity becomes bewildered by leaving his body, you should purify your conscience. You need to have pure conscience. Then the body will become purified. And just like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya to take prasadam, Sarvabhauma had his son-in-law, Moga. And so Lord Chaitanya came, and it's traditional that some guests come to speak of this Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We offer a big plate of prasadam, nice facility. So they offer this huge plate. I actually experienced this when I was my first the second temple I opened was in Ecuador. And so I went there. I didn't have any help. And I just met some people and they invited me to their house. I taught them how to cook. And I cooked and I was teaching them. And so there was another devotee. And so he said, well, he's in charge. So the tradition is you offer him a big plate. So I got the big plate, and his little 4 or 5-year-old son came and said, he eats too much. Pointing at me. And he talks like a crazy man. Because I hadn't learned Spanish very well at that time. So anyway, so Amoga, he saw Lord Chaitanya, and he said, you're eating enough for 10 persons. Wow. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became so angry. He took a stick and Amoga ran out of the house. And he said, what kinds of sinful activities have I committed to have a son-in-law like this? And his wife said, may our daughter become a widow. And Sarvabhauma was so fuzzy, he felt so bad. I invited Lord Chaitanya to my home to be insulted. So, Amoga, because of his offense to Lord Chaitanya, he contracted leprosy, very heavy leprosy and cholera, and he was dying. So Lord Chaitanya, he knew he's omniscient, but he arranged with somebody, he told him, and he immediately went to see Amoga. And he said, my dear Amoga, criticizing people will never benefit you. Of course, that never happens here in Trinidad, but it does happen in other places.
Criticizing will never help you. He said, but you have the most fortunate father-in-law. Simply associate with him and you will become purified. And Lord Chaitanya touched his heart, and his heart immediately became purified. And he became a pure devotee, and he offered obeisances, he apologized to Lord Chaitanya. He went and took shelter of Sarvabhauma and became a wonderful devotee. So this is the point, that we need to find the real shelter. And the real shelter is permanent. Just like Krishna is our permanent friend. And service to Krishna is our permanent shelter. And the lotus feet of Krishna. Lotus feet means that I'm surrendered. That's what the state lotus feet. It's not like some abstract that we grab onto somebody's feet. But actually, in ancient times, when a king would conquer another king, after the other king surrendered, then that king would put his foot on his head. And I come with you. So, Lord Chaitanya, sometimes he would put his feet on the head of a devotee. Just like Haridas Thakur, when he wanted to leave this world because he couldn't bear the idea that Lord Chaitanya would leave. So, he spoke to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, please allow me to leave. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave some argument. But finally he said, yes, you can leave. So Lord Haridas began to chant the holy name and glorify Lord Chaitanya. And he took his lotus feet and put them on his heart. Of course his heart was already pure. But a devotee doesn't think that. Devotee thinks that my only source of purity is the association of the devotee. And of course, serving the deity, serving the devotees, serving the temple. This is my shelter. So this is the shelter that Srila Prabhupada has offered all of us. And if we take that shelter, then, and become serious in Krishna consciousness, then we can offer that same shelter to others. And that is basically, that is the nature of this world. Everywhere in every country, children are being educated, people are working, and it's all for external benefit. But they're missing, Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, Raja Vidraja Guyam, in Bhagavad Gita. He says that there are so many universities and institutions that are giving so much detailed knowledge, but they have no knowledge of the soul. And Krishna says, if you want real knowledge, then Tesham Satadiyutanam Vajitam Pritipurvakam Vidami Buddhi Yogam. That the first thing you do, that Satadiyutanam, you should always be related to me, always be in contact with me. And in what way? Vajitam Pritipurvakam, full of loving devotion. That's the only way we can actually relate to Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to Sri Guru, to the Vaishnava, to love and service. Because wherever there is love, immediately there is service. And whenever there is voluntary service, it's because there is love as an impetus. So, this is what Lord Chaitanya is asking us. I have given you this shelter, the shelter of the holy name, the greatest shelter. Because the holy name is the greatest shelter, because we can access the holy name at any point, at any moment. We can have access, immediate access. You can't do that with the deity. I can't just jump up on the altar right now and say, I want to be with Lord Chaitanya. And then somebody will throw me off. So, some crazy man jumping on the altar. But we can chant the holy name. And anywhere, anytime. Nam Namakari Bahuda, Nija Sarva Shakti, Vikarpatani Amiti Smarane Nama. at any time, in any circumstance. There are no rules governing how to chant the holy name. But there are very strict rules on how to focus the consciousness on the holy name. And what are those rules? Trinidad Visvarichena Pururima Vishnu. Because Lord Chaitanya says that Dudaiva Idvishami Hajani Nandurana. That unfortunately the Lord has unlimited names which all have unlimited mercy, which have total access, but unfortunately I have no attraction. So how will you get the attraction? Trinidad Visvarichena. Cultivate humility, and become more tolerant than a tree. Respect everyone else, and don't look for any respect for yourself. That way we'll be able to chant the holy name properly. And Lord Chaitanya adds on, Pradhanana Janana Sundari Kavita Vav. That in order to develop this humility and tolerance and proper attitude toward others, you have to give up the pursuit of wealth, unnecessary wealth. You can make as much wealth as you want, but you have to learn how to use it properly. And Najana, I don't want any followers, I don't want any recognition anywhere. And Nasundari, I am not hankering for the opposite sex. And Kavita, I also don't want fruitive activity. So, if we approach the Lord with that mentality, that level of consciousness, then chanting His holy name will become very easy. And with great knowledge or without great knowledge, just by the association of devotees and chanting the holy name and dancing for Krishna, we can go back home back to God. But that dancing has to be real. It has to be induced by the association of the devotee and the deity. It has to be free from ego. It's like in my first visit to India in 1976. All the devotees were all young. You know, the oldest devotees in the movement were like 28, 30 years old. And so maybe there's a couple of 35 who are a few of them are a little older. But most of everybody at 18, 19, 20, 23, 25. So started the kirtan, and Prabhupada was coming from his morning walk, and one devotee started in the kirtan, taking the whole kirtan, running toward Prabhupada, saying Jai Prabhupada, and then kind of sliding into Prabhupada, just right before him. He thought this would be very good. Then we ran to the other side, slid into the deity. And then we ran back, and then Prabhupada walked in, and everybody bowed down. And Prabhupada looked, because he had actually been watching from the outside. He immediately walked over to the Vyasa. Usually he would go and greet the deity, but this time Pujari didn't know what to do. Sitting there with the fine shell. Prabhupada waiting for Prabhupada. Prabhupada goes to sit on the Vyasa. What do I do? And so then Prabhupada said, this is not dancing, this is lust. Prabhupada said that chanting and dancing should be done for the pleasure of the deity. And if there's no deity, for the pleasure of the Vaishnava. But it should not be, we don't have to look, the point that Srila Prabhupada is making is we don't have to look for happiness. The material external happiness, we will get it in exact measure as we deserve. And spiritual happiness, we will get as much as we want. Because if you want it enough, it will manifest. Krishna guarantees that if you really, especially Lord Rupa Swami, he says, by having intense greed to surrender to Krishna and do what Krishna wants, by doing that, then you can actually, that's the price for becoming Krishna. You have to surrender. So this is what we try to teach people. This is Krishna consciousness. This is what this verse is talking about. That material nature will force you to surrender. So better to transcend material nature and direct our consciousness to Krishna, and then we will go back home, back to that associate with Krishna eternally. So these are some thoughts on this particular verse. I'll stop here. Any comment or question? Yeah. Thank you.
So we were talking recently about mental offenses, like if you think bad about
Just be just really loud. Just turn off that fan for a minute. I can hear the question better. Just for a minute. Okay.
Yeah, speaking recently about mental like activity, So the question is does a karmic action on a mental level have a karmic reaction? Like if you think bad about somebody, or does it have a reaction on the mental level? If there is a negative action, then is there a negative reaction?
Mm-hmm. So what, if you have a negative consciousness?
Yeah, like usually karma is like if you do if there's a physical action, then there will be a physical reaction. Right?
Yeah.
But on the mental level, is there a similar kind of dynamic?
There is, but it's not a reaction, it's not an obligatory reaction. Because in Kali Yuga, thinking does not create a reaction. But there is a reaction in the sense that our consciousness goes into the material energy, and it will be attracted to the material energy. That's the reaction. But it's not like the law of physics that I pick this up and it will come down. It's not equal and opposite. But because we're situating our consciousness in some lower category of thought, then the mind will become contaminated. But it's not exactly tit for tat. But because most people have so many materialistic thoughts, they're just burying themselves in karma. Any other questions? Comment? Okay.
It's a bit off topic, but I was trying to explain the concept of an absolute. I only have so much material. Have you got any examples of how the absolute could be explained?
How what?
The absolute. Like Krishna is the absolute truth or the absolute form of beauty. So what do we mean when we say absolute?
Yes, we also have our absolute. Because we live in a world of perception, not in a world of reality. What we accept as real is according to our perception. So therefore, the material energy will act in such a way that to enforce the desire of the living entity. And so absolute, just like an ant. You have an ant on your body. The ant doesn't think, I'm on a human body. The ant thinks, I'm on an incalculable stretch of some type of matter because of his relative position. So according to our relative position, therefore I gave the example yesterday, that if you take a glass, I think I gave it this morning also, you fill it with water, the glass is full, but it doesn't contain the whole ocean. So, but the glass is full. So we will never be able to understand all the aspects of the absolute. Even absolute itself, which means beyond time and space, we can't even conceive of that. What does it mean to be beyond space? What does it mean to be beyond time? We see everything in terms of time, past, present, and future. So, and the absolute Krishna, he promises that I will become manifest in your life. I will become manifest. You may manifest in the form of the holy name, you may manifest in the form of the deity, you may manifest in the form of Prasad. But if we're a little bit serious about Krishna consciousness, then Krishna will gradually reveal himself. But the Upanishads warn us that verse. That we can never fully understand Krishna, but he will reveal himself, but not through mechanical means. That not through conferences or educational activities, na bahuna, na vedaya, na bahuna shukena. Not by great intelligence, and not by reading many books, even Prabhupada. It will happen when we see those things through Krishna's energy, and especially through his devotees. Otherwise, so many people here have Bhagavad Gita. How many Bhagavad Gitas have we distributed in Trinidad all these years? Yet, people don't just read Bhagavad Gita and show up next morning for Mangalarti. It takes them a long time, and sometimes they can't understand it. So, it's no wonder that we have difficulty understanding the absolute. Because some limited, but to speak of Brahman, the Brahman said, the Brahmavadis and the Mayavadis, they have to work so hard to understand the absolute truth, whereas the devotee of the absolute truth embraces it. So, Hare Krishna. So thank you all very much for your kind attention. Unfortunately, this visit here is a little short this time. I leave tomorrow. I'll be back to speak to a few devotees on Monday 26th. And just got a lot of responsibilities that I've had to take on. So, but I'm always very fond of coming here and associating with all of you. So thank you very much for your attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, C.C. Nitai Gaura Chandra ki jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Jai Gaura Premanandi.